Hi, everybody. It's Ian here from IBI Performance Coaching, and today I'm going to be talking about a very important distinction that not enough people make, but that has the capacity to really change the way you approach your health and fitness for the better. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the exciting topic of precision in language. Now, I know that that seems like a purely academic topic, like how could this possibly be applicable? But absolutely, trust me, it is, because imprecise language is going to lead to confused thinking, and if your thinking is confused, it's going to lead to inefficient or counterproductive behaviors. So what am I talking about? The distinction between exercise and physical activity, and this is a distinction that I've had people impugn on in my comment section before. I hear fitness influencers make this mistake all the time. These are not the same thing, and it is very important to keep them separate. Let's go with the definition first of exercise. This comes from Dr. Doug McGuff. Look him up. He is one of the leading experts. He says, exercise is a specific activity that stimulates a positive physiological adaptation that serves to enhance fitness without undermining health. Okay, so in other words, I'm going to say it in my words now, probably no less verbose, perhaps more verbose, but here we go. In other words, exercise is limited to activities that improve physiological capacity through an application of stress sufficient to produce lasting improvement, but not excessive such that it damages your health and functionality. Okay, so basically what that means is exercise can only take place above a certain threshold, and that threshold, just generally speaking, tends to be around 70%. So if you're operating at 70% of your, let's say, 1 rep max of your maximum capacity, for, even if it's 1 rep or some period of time, you're probably driving some sort of physical adaptation. For something like hypertrophy, this would mean, if you can do 10 reps of something until you hit failure, well, then that means that rep 7, 8, 9, and 10 are going to be the ones that drive physical adaptation and can really be considered the exercise portion of the set, although that's kind of a strange way to talk about it given our common parlance. Okay, physical activity, here's the distinction, right? Physical activity is very rarely stressful, and even when it is, it's very rarely stressful to the point of capacity building. So people talk about, I need to get some exercise. I'm going to take the dog for a walk. It's not exercise. A study showed that when people started thinking of their daily chores as exercise, they lost more weight. Well, that's wonderful that they lost more weight if that was their goal, but it's not exercise, okay? And you could have gotten the same benefits just by thinking about it appropriately. Even most sports, the way that most people play them, are not exercise. They're just physical activity, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, physical activity is absolutely a crucial part of this whole puzzle. But it's not exercise. It's different, right? So if you play pickup basketball, unless you're playing pickup basketball to the point where your muscles are getting so fatigued that they grow larger as a result, and your ability to jump increases because your strength in your legs gets better, then you can't really call it exercise. And I'm not saying that that never happens. That certainly happens for people who have just started playing pickup basketball. But after a while, your body adapts to that, and the game, the nature of the activity limits the amount of stress that you're putting on your body to so that it doesn't pass that threshold the way that it needs to be classified as exercise. Okay, so why is physical activity still crucial if it's not exercise? Well, there's a study, a recent 2024 study that found, according to these authors, that low levels of physical activity actually produce something called exercise resistance. So these two things work like, hand in hand. They work together. They're interdependent, physical activity and exercise. If you're not getting enough physical activity, the exercise you're doing is less effective, specifically less effective at causing fat burning changes in your body. A separate study found that it was 8,500 steps per day. Okay, so the first study was 8,000 steps per day for exercise to cause fat loss. The second one is 8,500. So very similar numbers there, and well within the margin of error, I would say. 8,500 to activate what's called EPOC, excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, which is colloquially known as the afterburn effect. And this is basically your body having to use extra resources in the form of fat post-exercise in order to fuel the recovery that needs to take place. You've stressed your body, and as part of its recovery, it needs more fuel, and so it's drawing that from fat. And so your consumption of calories, your basal metabolic rate and things are elevated post-exercise for something up to like 24 hours, something like that, right? But that doesn't happen unless you're getting enough physical activity. In other words, unless you're telling your body that it's healthy enough to adapt, and you send that healthy enough signal by getting enough physical activity, unless you're sending that you're healthy enough signal to your body, it's not going to engage in adaptation. So this afterburn effect, for those of you wondering, okay, well, where exactly is this dividing line? I said it causes adaptation. I gave you that 70% number. Well, another way you could think about the bright dividing line between exercise versus physical activity is, does it trigger an afterburn effect, or does it have the capacity to trigger an afterburn effect in the presence of sufficient physical activity? And if it does, then it's almost certainly exercise, because it means that your body is having to engage in dedicated recovery post bout. So that would be a great dividing line to consider. All right. Here's another distinction that's very closely related. Health is not fitness. When you hear people talk about health and fitness, you might just think they're being verbose. They're throwing around verbiage for no apparent reason. They are two distinct things. And even the people who say health and fitness don't often know this. They're not the same thing. What is health? It is the absence of things like disease, pathology, and disability. Okay? Health is about balance, often dynamic equilibrium. So not staying, it's not being one thing. It's not being fixed. Balance is not fixed. Balance is dynamic. But it's about balance, about maintaining balance. It's a general thing, right, that pervades across contexts. And it's really about maintaining. Now, if you've let your health slip, then you certainly need to improve. It's not about maintaining at that point. It's about improving your health to the point where you are considered healthy, and then it's about maintaining. But really the goal is to maintain your health throughout a long, happy life. On the other hand, fitness is the presence of capability. Okay, and fitness is actually only created through strategic imbalance. In other words, you have to create so much stress that you throw your body out of balance, and it has to recover its balance. And in recovering that balance, it strengthens the system. Okay, so it is associated with imbalance rather than balance. It is also performance. It's performance, right? Not general. It's performance in context, whereas health crosses the entire context of your life. Fitness is often context specific, and it's how you perform in that context. So think about a marathon runner. Would you say a marathon runner is fit? Well, they're fit for running a marathon. They have great marathon fitness, but they probably don't have great strength fitness, maybe, or like powerlifting fitness, right? And so there's a specificity to fitness that doesn't exist for health. Fitness is about excelling. It's about, this is the level of my current capabilities, and I am trying to improve above and beyond those capabilities. I'm trying to expand those capabilities. Whereas health, once you are healthy, like there's kind of a ceiling to it. Can you get healthier? Okay, maybe you can, but it's quite limited, right? Whereas performance, fitness can improve quite a bit for almost everybody in almost any context. All right. Physical activity is what drives health. These are the two that are tightly coupled together, right? And so something like this another study, a separate one, 8,600 steps, and there's that sort of 8,000, close to 8,000 number again. 8,600 steps reduces all-cause mortality. That's a question of health. Lots of very fit people die at young ages. So they were fit but not healthy. And there are many healthy people, they have fine blood markers, they're going to live a long time, who can't really said to be fit in any real context, right? Exercise is associated with fitness, and so is training, but I don't want to get into a whole nother distinction. Training is learning a skill, right? Something specific like that, whereas exercise is more about developing general physical capabilities, right? So what does all this mean? Well, based upon these updated definitions of exercise and physical activity, we should be able to infer that physical activity needs to be pervasive, as in scattered throughout your life like sprinkles on a Sunday, and varied, like the colors of sprinkles on your Sunday. It should take many different forms. It should be walking, it should be doing chores, it should be cooking dinner, it should be playing with your kids, it should be dancing with your wife, it should be varied, pervasive. Exercise, on the other hand, should be brief, intense, and infrequent, relatively speaking, because it's a stress on your body and requires recovery. We should also be aware that we need both of these things. We need them both, and they are interdependent. They require one another in order to function properly, as we've covered here. But just because they're interdependent, it does not mean that they can be substituted for one another. Quite the opposite. Because if things are interdependent, it means that we need both of them in order to function properly. And if we substitute one for the other, we only have one half of the equation. So, for some reason, nobody thinks to replace sleep with food, even though both of those things can be considered restorative, recovery-focused pillars of health, well-being, fitness. Yet so many people try to replace their exercise with their physical activity, or their physical activity with their exercise. Keep them separate, but engage in both in a way that benefits either. Okay, that's all I got for you today. I hope that it was useful. Thank you so much to everybody who does the things that support a YouTube channel. You know what those are. If you're interested in exercise programs that are designed for, the average person who just wants to get healthy, fit, look good, feel great, but doesn't have a ton of time or space or equipment, you can check those out below. The Facebook group is also available there, or you can pose any questions here, obviously, underneath, and I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, so that's Ian for RBI Performance Coaching, reminding you that elite performance is a choice. It's up to you.